Welcome in, everybody, to the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Billy Musio, and tonight you're watching Grind Time on the Full-Time Fantasy YouTube channel. I am going to be starting a new segment tonight, this evening. We are going to be starting a new segment weekly called Meet the Players, where we are introducing a lot of our successful high-stakes players at the FFWC. Tonight, we have our special guest, Glenn Karant, coming on. First, we're going to run through this intro video, and we'll get him on. We'll start talking about his background in the FF industry, how many years he's been playing, what he likes to do outside of work, and a little bit about his draft philosophy. So stick around, folks, and when you get back, we're going to have Glenn on the show.
Nothing but time, use it to grind. They huff and they puppet, this bacon is mine. Stakes are all high, your stakes are so dry. I'm as rare as they come, put it all on the line. Losing very doubtful, cause I'm winning every outcome. I'm impressed by his guess, there's no reason to guess. Drafting like I won the lotto, but it's grind every day. Managing teams is just part of the game. Free agents, lineups, they all in one place. This is the content, they can't be replaced. Speaking of place, first is the option. Win is the goal and I do it real often. Tournament entries, I already bought them. I bury the field, that's the nail in the coffin. Checking my watch, checking my clock. Grind is the time, I ain't never gonna stop. Digital, analog, never gonna stop. You ain't never gonna stop, I ain't never gonna stop. Checking my watch, checking my clock. Grind is the time, I ain't never gonna stop. Digital, analog, never gonna stop. You ain't never gonna stop, I ain't never gonna stop. Cause it's grind time, let's go.
Welcome in, everybody. It's Grind Time. I'm your host, Billy. And today, Glenn Karant's joining me. He is a FF, 25 years playing FF, 19 years in high stakes. One of the successful players that we have over at the FFWC. He has multiple top 10 finishes in the FFWC as well as other high stakes sites in the overall contest. Total career earnings, I'm not going to say exactly the dollar amount, but I'm going to let you know it's a lot of money. He's made quite a bit, but for tax purposes, ex-wife purposes, we are not going to mention the dollar figure. But Glenn,
plural, not singular, by the way.
Welcome to the show, Glenn. Excited to have you on. I know we've been messaging behind the scenes quite a bit, trying to fit you in the busy schedule. I'm excited to kick this off with you. How you doing tonight?
Doing great. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here on this inaugural Fantasy Football Meet the Players segment that you're doing. It's a brilliant idea. So congrats on that. And, before I even say your name, I'm curious, and other inquiring minds out there I'm sure are curious as well, Billy. But I'd like to know what it is that I see you sipping on, that this red mind-altering substance swigging on from a wine glass. And yes. I don't know whether to call you Beaujolais Billy or Merlot Musio. Which one would it be?
I like Beaujolais. No, I don't really like Beaujolais. I don't like Merlots either. Let's. I got to think of some different varietals here. Well, anything. I'm trying to think of another. I'm more of a cab drinker, of course. I like more my Bordeaux, so we can do Bordeaux instead of Beaujolais. Bordeaux Billy is much better. So
Bordeaux
I like old world style wines. I'll drink, California style cabs, of course, but I really enjoy old world style wines. I just like more of the earth notes, just a little bit, just fits my palate more. So Bordeaux Billy is quite all right with me. I know we're talking off air. It's bright inside today, isn't it? You got some sunglasses on.
Oh yeah, I do.
Did you smoke a doobie?
No, not quite. Actually, it's for another reason. I'd like to state the real reason is that I'm a devoted disciple to one of my heroes in life, the iconic and legendary rock and roller Ian Hunter. But real reason is a lot more boring than that. Got some albino in me, snake eyes, and I'm very sensitive to light.
All right. Well, team name, I failed to mention that in the beginning. Team name here for Glenn is Snake. People have seen him in the draft rooms. You've probably seen him in the chats as well. But Glenn, why don't you tell all the listeners where you're from, maybe originally, where you reside currently? Don't need a city. State's fine if you don't feel comfortable. But why don't you tell a little bit about yourself?
I was born and bred on this tiny island, Billy, or Bordeaux Billy, that's roughly 13.4 miles long. But, however, it also happens to be the capital of the world, a.k.a. Manhattan, New York City. or at least it used to be. It still is to a certain extent. And you've heard of that, have you? Of
I
course?
have, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
They
But
do
I've
not
also-
make Bordeaux. They do not make Bordeaux.
They don't make Bordeaux, no. It's on the other coast. Where are you, by the way?
I'm in Oregon, Bend, Oregon.
Okay, so you're a lot closer to the Bordeaux makers than I am, obviously. But I've lived overseas as well. I do a lot of international traveling. I've been to over 30 countries and lived in 4 different ones, spanning 4 different continents as well. So
Was that work related, or did you just travel for fun?
it was a bit of both. The traveling part was for fun. The working part in the 4 different countries was for work.
And what was your are you still employed? Are you retired, or are you working now?
Nope, I'm retired. The last job I had was I was working for a rather prominent mergers and acquisitions firm. I was the corporate recruiter and head sales trainer.
Awesome. So how would you say, are there any transferable skills there with fantasy football, or is it everything you're doing is just 100% on the side grinding?
Well, I've been in sales a long time, but I think the football experience, no. The short answer is no. However, I'm a big football fan, just like most of the people that are listening to this are and watching, and so as you are. One of my earliest childhood memories of my life, actually, was sitting on my dad's lap and watching a gentleman by the name of Fran Tarkenton, number 10, throw a bomb to a gentleman called Homer Jones, number 45, the New York Giants, which he caught so gracefully over his shoulder on the right sideline. And it's one of those images, sitting on my dad's lap that just stayed with me. I'm talking about circa 1966 or thereabouts.
A little
You
before
weren't
my
even
time.
born then, were you?
Little before my time.
Yeah. You don't know Homer Jones, though, do you?
I do not. No.
Well, he was a bomb master in his day. Yeah, a la Randy Moss, but about 20, 30 years before. All right, I don't want to age myself. Keep going.
Well, so you've been playing fantasy football 25 years. We said 19 years in high stakes in the intro. How long have you been playing at the FFWC?
This is going to be my 4th full year at the FFWC. Out of those 19 years in high stakes, I did take 3 years off. It was 2007. I'm sorry, it was 18, 19, and 20. I took off. It was a 3-year hiatus, if you will. And when I came back, I started again in the FFWC. So it's my 4th full year playing in the FFWC.
So you took 3 years off. Did you do anything fun during those 3 years, or
No,
no?
quite the contrary. That's why I took it off. It wasn't fun, and I missed fantasy football. But I'll tell you what, though, and this is I've got a pet peeve and a compliment to you at the same time. I'll tell you, the last time I played was 2017, right? So I take those 3 years off, and I come back in 2021, which was last year.
Yep.
And oh my Lord, the transformation made in this industry during those 3 years was nothing short of stupendous. Everywhere, I played back in the days when you had to look at the box scores on Monday to get the scores and add them up to see who won. And then we went to the computer, of course. I know I'm aging and dating myself, but that's okay. There's no
Wait, hold up. You did not mail in your entry, your lineups every week?
No. No, you never.
You're not that old then. I've talked to players where they would count the box score up in the newspaper and then they'd mail their starting lineups in before Thursday.
We would do the same, but we do it by rotary phone as opposed to mail. It's either the postman or Ma Bell. Take your pick, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, the thing I was going to say is I come back and now everybody has a podcast and all these young duds or studs or self-proclaiming pundits and gurus and experts are talking about fantasy football and they're 18, 19, 22 years old. I'm just amazed. So it's a real dichotomy. You've got your older folks like myself that have been playing a while. You've got your young bucks that are just freshly out of college or even still in it. And I suspect you lay somewhere in the middle. However, the thing that really blew my mind was how little most of these talking heads or empty talking heads, and I'm trying to be nice, really knew about fantasy football. Because Billy, when those very same folks played in the NFF, played in another competitive high stakes football league, we always, the players would love to see their names in our league because we'd kill them. They had no chance. They didn't stand a chance against us. So it was always easy money. It was a minnow. swimming into a shark's mouth. And you, to your credit, not only walk the walk, but talk the talk. You're not an industry.
I'm a player first. The podcast just came as a hobby, and started playing started playing fantasy football in 2000, and I think we're at 2003, 2004 range, right? So I was, real young at the time. And I mean, I'm only 36 now, so I'm still young. But back then fantasy football was just kind of evolving. Like Yahoo was like the go-to site, right? Yeah. And stumbled across high stakes sites and started playing and started winning and realizing, oh, now I can actually win money, right? And so, but I was always a player first and just decided to do a podcast. So for me, it was never like the vision of being a podcaster. It was always, hey, I just want to win $1 million, or I want to win $500,000, or I want to win 150 grand, whatever it is, right? For me, it was always money driven and to just be the best. It was trying to strive. So I get what you're saying about some podcasters who are more maybe entertainment based than maybe winning based, but
more than style rather than substance. But there are some like yourself that can combine both, and that's a winning lethal combination. I'm just wondering why there were so many out there after I came back after my 3-year layoff. I mean, the industry exploded.
It did explode.
It was like night and day from 2017 to 21.
And we're seeing it in the numbers as well, just exponential growth year after year as it becomes more legal in states for sports betting as well. So I think we're going to continue to see that trajectory in the growth in the fantasy world, into the future. So there's still a lot of untapped markets, including Europe and as well. So excited to see that. I want to backtrack a little bit. I missed this question earlier. What are your hobbies outside of fantasy football?
Outside of fantasy football, I touched on one of them. I'm really big on international travel. And again, I told you I lived abroad in 4 different countries: Japan, Colombia, the UK, and Manhattan, and many other places in America as well. I love international cuisine, which goes hand in hand with the international traveling, of course. Let's see.
Your cannibalism, do you eat snakes?
No, I eat mongooses, of course. What a silly question. No. Other hobbies are I like to learn and speak languages. That's really intriguing and challenging and a lot of fun. I love the ocean. I really, really am the most passionate, more than anything in my life, about rock and roll. I'm a painfully average guitar player. Try as I might, I just don't have the talent to do it. I mean, I can speak languages, but I can play fantasy football. But what I really want to do the most, I'd give it both up in a millisecond, Billy, or Bordeaux, Billy. I'm sorry, just to be able to play lead guitar like Dwayne Allman or Jimmy Page or Jeff Beck. Do you know who those guys are, Billy?
I do. Yeah, I recognize those names.
All right.
Sitting in the car with my dad when I was young, I get to learn a lot of rock and roll. So
thank you, Billy. It makes me feel good.
And honestly, it's not rock and roll, but it's more in that era. But my favorite musician is Van Morrison. So I have a bit of an old soul myself. Grew up with parents who listened to the music, and it's stuck with me. Back to FFWC. Yeah. What do you like the most about the FFWC? There's many reasons why players play over here. It's not easy, right? I've played at multiple sites. It seems to be some of the tougher draft rooms, in my opinion. But what is it that draws you back year after year?
Well, Billy, as you state, the competition is top-notch, and everybody likes to go against top-notch competition, especially when you win. It makes you feel good. The combination of loot and prestige is intoxicating, to say the least. But categorically and unequivocally, the FFWC checks all the boxes, and I'll run them down. It checks all the boxes head and shoulders above the competition, bar none. We can start with the ROI, just from solely a loot perspective, right? Money, the best ROI in the industry, bar none. It's people should do their homework. Don't take my word for it. I love the software. Oh my goodness. The software is, again, head and shoulders above the 3 competitors or main competitors in the high stakes arena, Billy. I love the competition I already mentioned. I love the customer service. I mean, Scott and Roy, top notch. They really know how to do their thing. And you know what I also like? It's like back in the old days when you went for a haircut, and I had a lot more hair than I do now. You would go to the local barber shop, and you'd strike up a conversation with the barber, and you'd get to know him personally, and you'd have a relationship with him for years. And it was really nice. It was a nice camaraderie, and it was an intimate feeling, more like a boutique financial services house as opposed to a wire house. Or let me make the comparison: the barber shop versus a Cuts or Us, a large corporate conglomerate. So the FFWC has this really intimate, small town, almost like a friend league. There's a lot of action and banter back and forth on the message boards, and you get to know the competitors that you're going against. And the other contests, by contrast, are really cold by comparison. So I like that. I like the camaraderie, the software, the customer service, the competition. I love the double flex.
Yeah, a lot of the same reasons you mentioned are the reasons I like playing at FFWC. First and foremost, the ROI, which you mentioned first as well. I mean, no other site will pay out $12,000 in league prizes.
Oh, no.
$10,000 to one winner with the Dominator, best record, most points. That's unheard of. So league prizes are first and foremost. I also love I call it the family feel. Right. It's definitely more, you said small town, which I'm from a small town, so it hit home as well. But the family feel to me is where it's at. It does feel like you're more welcomed and belong there. Roy goes head over.
Roy's the man.
Roy's up to like 2 a.m, making sure everybody is situated. I mean, I'm
Roy
messaging him on.
Sleep. He doesn't
sleep. No, he doesn't. I messaged him on Discord, and it's like 1:30 in the morning, and I get a message back in like 30 seconds. So love the customer service as well. So a lot of the same reasons that you mentioned are the reasons why I play at the FFWC as well.
They are well deserving of all the kudos and accolades. Far and away the best site. And I'm not paid by you guys to say that. I'm free on my own will to go anywhere. Trust me, I'm not getting anything for this or talking about it. But comparatively speaking, I just wish everyone would try it once, because I don't think they'd really go back to where they were playing, or where they previously were playing.
Yeah, I used to play primarily at other sites, and in the last 2 years now, I've transitioned most of my allocated funds to the FFWC because of the ROI. I mean, my partner and I, Dave Hubbard, one of the best players in the world, in my opinion.
I know Dave. Yeah, he's a good guy. And a good player.
Yeah, we had a 98% return last year at FFWC, which is astronomical. You don't see that at other sites as much as you would, or as you can see at FFWC, because of the Dominator. So don't take our words for it. I did not pay Glenn. Glenn is here on his own talking about why he likes playing at FFWC. How many hours a week are you dedicated?
By the way, I also, my first 2 years in the league, I won 2 Dominators. I was fortunate enough to do that. So right there is $20,000 just for one league without even going into the playoffs.
One Dominator pays for roughly 6 World Championships.
There you go.
If you can hit 1 and 6, then you're immediately in the black, and then everything at that point is just icing on the cake. So
absolutely.
How many hours a week right now do you dedicate to fantasy football, would you say?
Too many, Billy. Too many. Much to the chagrin of my girlfriend, every time June comes around, I start reading up and start the studying. I take it seriously, because I am currently retired, and I've got too much time on my hands. So I put my time and my resources, energy, and money toward fantasy football. So I'd say every day, Billy, talking literally 5-6 hours. But if I wasn't doing that, I would still be interested in football. I'm interested in world events. I'm interested in a lot of different things, but I love football. So when the season starts, 5-6 hours a day easily, just without even trying.
Yeah, especially when you can watch film. There's games on, and you can catch up on games on Monday, watching more Sunday games. I mean, that can easily just double, in my opinion. And off season, 5-6 hours is easy to hit. When you come into season time and like we actually have games to watch, I would be pressed not to do 5 or 6 hours just because there's so much we can do during the season. You can look at waiver wires. You can look at film. There's always something to do in the football world. I love it.
Oh my goodness. Podcasts, reading content, the television, it's on and on. It's amazing. We mentioned it before. It's just amazing how much this industry has grown. Are there any equity, publicly traded equity companies out there, AKA stocks, that cater to fantasy sports that you know of?
I have no idea. I've never even researched it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me either. But you talk about a growing industry. That's a damn good place to put your money, I would bet.
Well, speaking of putting your money and making bets, where do you put your money when you are in a draft room? What is your draft philosophy and why? Are you a hero running back guy, a zero running back guy, robust running back guy? Kind of walk me through your first 2 or 3 rounds on average.
All of the above. I'll just say in general, they all work. That's what's great about this game. There's not one winning strategy. You can employ different strategies and be successful at them all, or unsuccessful as well. And when you become more unsuccessful than successful at certain strategies, then you switch off. I don't normally like to draft quarterbacks and tight ends within the first 4 or 5 rounds. I like to wait on them, not quite as much as you do, Billy.
Push it to the limits.
Not around 12 or thereabouts.
13.
Huh? 13? It's going to bite you in the butt one day, Billy.
One day. Haven't seen it yet.
No, let's knock on wood. I'm not going to give you a hard time because it works for you, but we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't feel comfortable going into a season having someone who's ranked, without mentioning specific names, below 16 as a starting quarterback. Tight ends I can push more or less. But there is every year. I mean, look at 2019 Lamar Jackson. Look at the rookie year for Cam Newton. Look at Tom Brady's fabulous, 55 touchdown year, or Peyton Manning when he's second year with the Broncos. So the owners that were sophisticated, savvy, and smart enough to get the aforementioned players on their teams,
or risk tolerant,
to victory, huh?
Or risk tolerant,
absolutely. But they did their due diligence at least 4 or 5 hours a day, I'm sure. So
yeah, and I think it breaks down to just comfort level as well, right? Like I'm comfortable waiting that long because I know that I'm going to be spending hours on the waiver wires on Tuesdays. Like I know that we're going to be, if we are in a pickle and our tight end is not living up to expectations or our quarterback is not living up to expectations, we can grind the waiver wire. We can take a look at who's available. We can watch every ad. We can watch every drop. We can see who's coming up on bye weeks and what other players are going to have to make, maybe the tough decisions that they're going to have to make in order to maybe acquire one of their players that they're going to be dropping that is going to better our team at the tight end position or the quarterback position. So
absolutely.
There's a lot of, I'm pretty high. I have pretty high risk tolerance, so I will push the 2 positions to the max. And in years past, we've been lucky enough to find streamers or even players who have significantly outperformed ADP. I agree. There's more than one way to skin a cat when it comes to fantasy football. That's the beauty about this. Mongoose. There you go. Especially if you're a volume drafter. Are you a volume drafter? How many leagues do you do?
In the last 2 years, I became a volume drafter. So before that, I wasn't, or otherwise my earnings would have been a lot more just based on my winning percentage over that almost nearly 2 decades I've been playing. But you're a volume player, obviously.
Yeah.
Were you always, Billy?
Yeah, but it was never like I think it really bumped up in the last 2 years. I was a volume drafter before, but not quite to this level, right? A lot of that was bankroll as well, like just building the bankroll and getting comfortable with how much you were spending in the high stakes community, and part of that was I never wanted to, add money outside of X amount that I hadn't won, right? So I have this formula, and as the winning progressed, the formula, of course, gets larger, and the money that I can put back into the pie got larger. And so in the last 2 or 3 years, the volume kind of really picked up because of the winnings and the earnings.
So if you're pushing your tight end and your quarterback, and you're playing in 100+ leagues, redraft, not best ball, I mean, you've got to. I played in 41 last year total, and I was a pretty busy man come the waiver wire time. And if you're doubling or tripling that, and you're pushing your QBs and tight ends, be careful. The best laid plans of mice and men off to go astray, Billy.
Yeah, so that's the beauty though. Is I have a partner, Dave, who's another set of eyes and ears. Also another, he outworks me on the waiver wire. I'm going to be honest here. I thought I worked hard until I met Dave.
There you go. You have a partner. That's
first and foremost. Two, because of how many we're drafting, we're not doing them all the same, right? This early in the year, I will tend to push the position and take upside shots at the tight ends for scenarios or situations that I think might blossom as the camp news continues. And then we are going to see those players' ADPs kind of climb the closer we get to week one. But as we get closer to week one and ADP has settled and we are now into a pretty typical non-news standpoint that's going to really shift ADP drastically outside the Thursday night game, that's where I start mixing in a lot more of the earlier ADPs as well. So, those last 2 or 3 weeks, I may do 30% of my drafts in those 2 or 3 weeks and really mix in ADP. So I'll take some higher quarterbacks, I'll take higher tight ends and get some diversification throughout the portfolio in order to make sure that I have that
98% return on your investment.
Yeah, to make sure that you have that inside your portfolio to better your chances, at an overall. Like last year, one of our 10K leagues, we do 3 10K leagues, but one of our 10K leagues last year, had Kyler Murray, and it was dominant until he got hurt, right? And then we filled it in later, but just to show you, one had Kyler Murray, and the other one had I think we were between Burrow and Fields or someone we drafted. I forget what it was. It was both, but last year Burrow was going later, right? So, there's a lot of different ways that you can tackle this, but because of the volume and the timing we're drafting, we're kind of switching up strategies constantly.
Absolutely. Diversification or asset allocation are 2 words that everybody should not only know very well, but use on an annual basis. There's we talk about draft strategy, not necessarily hero or zero, running back and waiting on your tight ends. Most people, where I differ, I think, than most people that I play against in the fantasy football industry, and this is where most people, I think, tend to hit a pitfall, if you will, and fall short of reaching their goals. They're always looking back instead of forward.
Exactly.
It's a very, very, I'm not breaking any new ground here by saying anything different. However, it's a very difficult thing for people to just leave last year behind, or any past years, but especially the last year. And, things in life, of course, in football, same as life, they change from day to day, Billy. You wake up on the right side of the bed one day, and the next day it's on the wrong side of the bed or the left side. You go to work, you have good days at work, you have bad days. And that's just days. Think about week to week or month to month. Year to year, things change dramatically. And players' performance changes accordingly. And so many folks are looking back and not forward. They say they're looking forward, but they really don't trust their foresight. They don't have the foresight to be able to inform their peers what their hindsight's going to be 6 months down the road, essentially.
Very well said.
And, well, it's how I feel very strongly. You have to leave that comfort zone. Put it behind you. Even if somebody hasn't produced, if they're set up in a right situation, a player, to do so this year, and he's got the pedigree and the opportunity and the coaching philosophy and everything else that goes with it, etc., I'd be willing to take him no matter what, ahead of somebody who produced last year who might be aging and is ready to fall off a cliff. One other thing I wanted to mention was, Billy, ADP. It's an acronym. What does it stand for? You know what it stands for.
Average draft position.
Okay, the word average.
Yep.
Who wants to be average, Billy?
Nobody.
Who wants to be average? So when folks are post-draft gushing about a draft being so good or bad, I notice that too many times than not, they're doing it based on A, volume drafting, who you got at what discount, and B, last year's numbers, and 3, this year's projections. I don't make projections. I do rankings, but not projections. that's an exercise in futility. We're not Nostradamus here. It just doesn't work like that, in my opinion. So I lost my train of thought. Where was I going?
You were going with the average draft position and people posting boards about not having the foresight, I think, is where you were going.
Okay. So when people give me a good grade like you did, last Friday night on the Red versus Blue 3 and your buddy Hubbard.
Outside Trey Lance, but yes, keep going.
You mean a starting quarterback while I keep Kyler Murray on the bench this year? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. That's even worse than okay. Off topic. Keep going.
All right. We're going to have to finish that one off camera, though. Again, I lost my train of thought.
Foresight about average draft position.
I don't like when people like my draft. It truly makes me cringeworthy, Billy, when people commend my draft. Yeah, seriously.
I'm going to start applauding every one of them now.
Oh, don't, please. Because in all the years I've been playing, 19, every time not every time, a vast majority of the time, Billy, my drafts and others, I'm not alone in this, have been praised and gushed about. They've fallen flat. And other times they're being panned and laughed at. And those are the teams that end up winning. And again, I think because the barometer that most folks are using is they're looking behind their shoulders in the rearview mirror as opposed to what's in front of them this year, not last year.
I always tell people, if you have to see it to believe it, you're already too far behind the 8 ball to succeed.
Bingo. Perfect.
And,
well said.
And it's every year it happens. Like for you last year, I know you drafted a lot of Cooper Kupp. I drafted a lot of Debo, right? Had people waited to see it. Now where are they going? 101 overall in some drafts, 103, 104, all the in top 20 for Debo. So if people are weighted, now they never got to experience the discount from last year, and they're drafting now. They're chasing points, is what we like to say, right? And they're chasing those points from 2021 and 2022. So who's going to be this year's Cup? Who's going to be this year's Debo? Those where you go out and take those chances, right? And I think that's what you were implying is having that foresight and trusting your gut, the human element in football, situations, scenarios, schemes, coaching fits. How does it all play into that given player, right? And how are they going to progress in the new year, 2022 this year, for example?
Absolutely. And you mentioned something pretty key is trusting your gut, having the conviction that you have done the proper research and put in the time and the effort and the resources to do it on your own, as opposed to listening to all those, again, self-proclaiming pundits, experts, and gurus out there and draft according to ADP, because it's average. If I don't mind drafting a player at a premium, someone can laugh at me if I take somebody who's 17 picks before their ADP, or even 24, we'll go 2 rounds. I don't mind. If I like that player better than the other 24 players after them, and I know he's not going to come back to me, I'll take him.
We say, get your fucking guy is what we say. Go out and get him.
Bingo. Well, because at the end of the day, all that matters is which players are going to produce the most and put up the most points. That's
100% agree with you.
That's
let's wrap up the last couple questions here. Why don't you we have a lot of players in here who are either new to high stakes or who are dipping their toes or maybe wanting to make the plunge. Why don't you give me, I'm going to swap these last couple questions. What is your number one advice for players looking to dip their toes into the high stakes world?
If you're successful doing your thing in the Sans high stakes fantasy football world, keep doing it. There's no difference except the stakes are higher, essentially. But, if some people don't have necessarily the means to jump right in. So, again, as opposed to jumping right in, dip your little toe, your left pinky toe, that would be, and try a PPC. Get into one of the player profile championships for $350, or the FFWC has all different price points. They even have $50 starter leagues. You're playing against the best. You're going to learn from playing against the best, even if you get your butt kicked the first year. You're going to be all the more better for it. I always say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to leave the room, right?
Yep.
Because you're not going to learn anything.
Exactly.
So those folks who want to start, even if they get their butts kicked, and who knows that they will. You might be successful from day one. They're players. They're They do their trust your convictions. They do their homework just like high state fantasy football players do. There's no difference.
Last question of the day. List maybe a mistake or two that you see inexperienced players make, or maybe new players at the FFWC.
I think I alluded to it just moments ago about looking backward as opposed to forward. I mean, you see that from new players as well as vets and everybody in between. But also, they read too many sites. They don't trust their own damn convictions. I mean, if you believe in a player and you like him ahead of ADP, and I'm being redundant, it's a pet peeve of mine. I'm passionate about it. You know, I say fuck ADP. Same thing. You know, it doesn't mean anything. If you have a player, and I've got a few of them this year, just like I've had last year, Billy. You mentioned you drafted Deebo Samuel. Let me ask you a question. Did you draft Deebo Samuel ahead of Brandon Ayuk every chance you had?
Absolutely not. You take the discount.
Okay. Guess what I did last year, Billy?
Go for it.
I'm not King Kong on top of the Empire State Building here. I'm not pounding my chest. I'm just going to give you a fact. Not only did I take Cooper Kupp before Robert Trees or Robert Woods in every single draft I did, which totaled 41, every single one of them, I took Deebo Samuel like you did, smart man, ahead of Brandon Ayuk, and I took Leonard Fournette ahead of Ronald Jones. I had 0 shares of Jones, Ayuk, and Woods. And I had a combined.
When you say you took them ahead of them, though, you're not talking at ADP, are you? So, like, Ayuk was going in around 4 or 5. Were you taking Deebo in around 4 and 5, or were you just saying that you prioritized them more?
When they were both available on the board, Ayuk and Deebo, Kupp and Woods, Fournette and Jones, I would always take the wide receiver 2, a.k.a. Kupp and Deebo. So I wasn't necessarily reaching for them. I would take them at ADP, but I had a snake sense, which is rather keen. Sometimes you get a feeling. These certain players, you watch them on TV, you look at their names on paper. It's a very weird thing. And nobody wants to hear this because they're going to think I'm nuts, but they just pop out. You know?
No, 100%. That's what that film does, right? You watch film and you can say he's got it or he doesn't have it. And you can just tell by watching it. Your eyes don't lie, right? And analytics can be skewed. A defender falls down or slips and you have an 80-yard touchdown. And on the maybe on the sheet he went, 5 for 7 with 98 yards, but little do you know, if you didn't watch the game, that 78 of those 90 yards were on one busted play, right? And so that's where film kind of trumps analytics, in my opinion, because you can break down that and you can see those things. And again, it helps identify talent, especially when you're in drafts.
Amen, Billy. Well stated. And trust the old eyeball test as opposed to digging in the metrics. I mean, you made a statement the other day, and I'm not going to call you on the carpet on it, but you were mentioning a specific wide receiver. And you were looking at his analytics and the metrics, and it was the craziest misnomer / oxymoron I think I've ever heard in fantasy football. And this is not a strike against you. But I was trying to figure out how a wide receiver can be considered a top route runner. I'm sorry, a bottom route runner, yet a top separator at the same time.
Yeah, it's interesting how the analytics sometimes can clash, even though they're the same kind of metric per se, maybe under the umbrella, right? I don't know what the correct terminology there is.
A bad route runner and a great separator.
maybe he smells.
He doesn't use deodorant and the corners stay clear.
That reminds me, back in college, I left my basketball jersey inside of my gym bag, and forgot about it. Went to the game. I thought I took it out. It was washed, and I would open my gym bag and I was like, "Oh, jersey's in there." Didn't even look at it. Pull it out, and this thing smelled. It's been in my gym bag now for 7 days in a game, and wore it and sweaty. And I putting it on was making me nauseous. That's how bad this thing smelled.
It's bad for
guess
you,
what?
then. I mean,
yeah, I tell you what though. I had a lot of separation in that basketball game because no one wanted to come near me.
Even with the separation, how many points you put up? Be honest.
I don't remember what it was. This is like 25 years ago, but it was. I remember it being a pretty good game, actually.
That's
but
funny.
It was.
If you had that kind of separation, you had to score at least 20, though, Billy.
Yeah.
I got no respect for you on the D-ball.
Oh man, I was a horrible free throw shooter too. I was like Shaq, man. I couldn't hit a free throw if my life depended on it.
Underhand, Rick Barry style. You should.
Yeah, that would have been just granny shots.
He had a high percentage. He was one of the greatest free throw.
Yeah, I think he wasn't he? Until
yeah.
And then Curry. I think Curry broke the record, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Glenn, aka Snake, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Everyone, make sure to follow him on Twitter at DNA Profiling, up there in his name. Glenn, any closing words before we wrap up the show?
Not a word, but a sound rather, because I'd like to win a wager. So, for those of you that didn't get that, it was a hiss. You hear that, Donnie G? You owe me $250, essentially another entry into one more PPC.
Oh man, I would do it too. I would do it too for a free entry. Awesome. Well, thanks, Glenn, for coming on. A lot of words of wisdom. Next week, I will announce next week's guest on the new segment, Meet the Players, here shortly. So thanks again for coming on, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back here on Thursday with Jody on the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast, and then back Friday with Dwayne McFarland doing a Player Profiler Championship Draft live on Grind Time. So stay tuned, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy.
Nothing but time, use it to grind. They huff and they puff it, this bacon is mine. Stakes are all high, your stakes are so dry. I'm as rare as they come, put it all on the line. Losing very doubtful, cause I'm winning every outcome. I'm impressed by